Hey everybody, and welcome to this special on Chiron entering Pisces. And when it enters Pisces this year, it's in retrograde, and this is the Wounded Healer's Sacred Halloween Return. Yes, that's what I'm calling it. I'm Amani. I'm a karmic, holistic, astrological life coach, and I like to go in depth in all that I do, and all of my interpretations, especially when it comes to Venus, Mercury, Sun transits and everything really, are based on Vedic astrology, which is based on where the planets or the luminaries, which are the sun and the moon, are any given time in the sky. And all times are in GMT time as well. So yeah, thanks for listening. And yeah, so Chiron has done a lot this year. It went into Aries on the 3rd of May, and then it went retrograde on the 30th of July 2025, and then it enters Pisces on the 31st of October at 11:30 p.m, and that is what this is all about. And then Chiron goes direct in Pisces on the 2nd of January until the 4th of March 2026, when it goes back into Aries, and then Chiron stays there until the 3rd of August, when it goes retrograde in Aries again, in 2026. So when Chiron enters Pisces in retrograde this year, it happens on Halloween night, and this marks one of the most spiritually transformative astrological events of this year, as the Wounded Healer dives into the mystical waters of universal compassion, and it goes into the infinite world of dreams, spiritual transformation, our self-undoing, because Pisces is the 12th house, secrets that we keep from ourselves and others, the way we imprison ourselves and others can also come to the surface, and it's putting a spotlight on the 12th house, right? So this is our addictions as well, our escapism, the way we escape, whether it be through toxic relationships, over indulging in drugs, alcohol, sex, or anything else that is destructive to our balance, while being right, anything that makes us unstable, and the veil between the worlds, the intuitive world and the rational, logical world that we see with our eyes, right? And it's an astrological invitation to, dive deep into the healing waters of our collective soul, and because it's travelling backward, Chiron here is showing us we need to revisit old wounds through a completely different lens, viewpoint, mindset, one that prioritises spiritual understanding over purely, logical, psychological analysis. It wants us to slow down, go deep, self-reflect, be honest with ourselves, about our toxic ways of thinking, doing, or relating with ourselves and others. So this energy sends a ripple through the collective consciousness, while at the same time, pulling us backwards through time to heal ancient wounds. So, we may have dreams that may surface but remind us of past lives, but I talk about that later. It wants us to, really go within ourselves, as it's in the most intuitive and spiritually receptive sign, Pisces, right, Chiron is. And it sort of like, because Chiron and Pisces have been doing this dance and will do this dance, going retrograde and direct in Pisces and Aries for the next sort of like 6 years. And they've been doing this dance from about 2020, and it's given us a decade nearly to master the art of spiritual healing, action, and transcendent compassion. So when Chiron enters Pisces this year in retrograde, it's making a biquintal to Mercury, opposition to Venus, a biquintal to Mars. Biquintals are nice sort of energy in astrology. and I'll go in depth about what all that means in a while. And it's making a square to Jupiter, semi-sextile to Saturn, and a biquintile to the moon's north node, and a quintile to the midheaven. It's also forming 2 T-squares, the first between Mercury in Scorpio, moon in Aquarius, Uranus retrograde in Taurus, and Chiron retrograde in Pisces and the midheaven, and Jupiter in Cancer and Venus in Virgo. It's also making a grand trine between Mars in Scorpio, Saturn and Neptune in retrograde in Pisces, and Jupiter in Cancer. And I'm going to go in depth about what all these mean later. So in terms of energetic frequency, the wounded healer is transit in the realm of divine compassion in reverse motion, creating a powerful undercurrent that pulls us into the depths of our collective wounds, while simultaneously offering the keys to transcendent healing that goes beyond conventional methods. And this isn't just a transit, it's a spiritual reckoning wrapped up in the gentle waters of Pisces, right? And it happens on the most mystical night of the year this year, which is Halloween, right? So as Chiron goes retrograde in Pisces, as I said, we're being invited astrologically to heal old wounds through spiritual understanding rather than traditional psychological or rational logical analysis. As I said, wants us to let go and move beyond linear logical approaches and be open to the mysterious, intuitive waters of Pisces. It's about healing through surrender, compassion and spiritual transcendence rather than force or willpower. So Chiron retrograde in Pisces asks us to revisit our core wounds, not to just reopen them, but to understand them through the lens, the mindset of universal compassion and soul purpose. And the retrograde, shows that traditional healing approaches are not sufficient at this time. May work for some of you, but this energy shows that we need to be open to more spiritual practices, creative expression and mystical understanding to transform our pain into wisdom. And it's not about being perfectionistic and saying, I have to write like this or sing like this or whatever. It's about doing these things for yourself, being creative to help you handle and work through and understand your emotions. And the backward journey through Pisces shows we're healing through time itself, accessing ancient wisdom for some of you and future possibilities at the same time, so it's about moving towards your future, doing actions to work towards your future goals, but also dealing with the ancient wounds and looking into ancient traditions and religions, or what, theological, scientific beliefs, whatever works for you. It can be like being a spiritual archaeologist, excavating, digging the sacred meanings, looking for, exploring the hidden meanings within our deepest hurts or pains, are, the times we've been rejected, abandoned in our life. And it supports deep meditation, dream work and spiritual practices that help us understand our wounds as sacred initiations rather than mere psychological, spiritual, emotional trauma. So seeing them not just as things that have broken us, if you felt broken, rejected, abandoned or hurt, abused, targeted, it's about seeing them as opportunities to be your best self. And yes, it does hurt, and it's not about bypassing and invalidating your feelings and emotions and experiences, but it's about using them so you can reach your highest potential, or at least be comfortable and love and accept yourself, right? So Pisces energy and the retrograde backwards movement creates a mystical healing sanctuary, safe place where we can explore the spiritual dimensions of our pain without being overwhelmed by it. And it becomes clearer during this phase that our wounds are portals, doorways to wisdom, not just problems to solve. And it wants us to collectively confront our spiritual wounds, our disconnection from the sacred, our tendency to materialize suffering, and our need to remember that all wounds are ultimately pathways to compassion for ourselves, and others as well. We're collectively learning to heal through unity rather than separation, understanding that individual healing contributes to collective transformation. And the retrograde energy shows that humanity is ready to open to healing approaches that honour both ancient wisdom and contemporary modern understanding, and it prepares us for Chiron's eventual direct motion into Pisces, where we're being called to actively share our healing wisdom with the world. And the backward retrograde energy is all about gathering spiritual tools and understanding and doing the work to, find more emotional, spiritual, psychological balance within, so we can serve as healers and guides for others if we feel like we need to do that, It affects us by asking us to question how we can transform our wounds into wisdom and empower ourselves rather than self-destruct ourselves, and how we can use them for collective healing rather than just personal recovery, as I said, if you choose to, So positively, Chiron retrograde allows us to heal on a soul level. We're talking about, if I'm being honest, an increased intuitive healing that can help us upgrade our ability to be intuitive, and it can feel almost supernatural, giving us natural access to spiritual practices that actually work, not just feel good, and the capacity to transform personal wounds into universal wisdom that serves others. If we allow it, a beautiful softening can happen, where our harsh edges of old trauma begin to dissolve in the healing waters of Pisces, and we can develop genuine compassion for our own wounded parts rather than just trying to fix them, but negatively, there can be a tendency towards spiritual bypassing. It can help us to really be honest about our wounds as well, instead of bypassing them. But negatively, we can use meditation, as I said, and spiritual practices to avoid dealing with practical healing work that still needs doing, and the retrograde sort of like energy can create proper confusion about which healing methods actually serve us versus which ones just make us feel temporarily better, and there's a risk of becoming lost in victim consciousness rather than accepting our power as wounded healers, something I've observed countless times in my practice, and the best use of this energy involves combining practical healing work with spiritual understanding. This isn't about choosing between therapy and meditation, it's about integrating both approaches to create genuine transformation. Use this time to develop your intuitive healing abilities whilst maintaining grounded practices that support your daily life, because spiritual healing without practical application is just another form of escapism, and focus on dream work that reveals actual healing insights, not just pretty symbols. Creative expression that transforms pain into beauty, that serves others and heals you and balances you, right? And spiritual practices that connect you to universal wisdom and compassion without losing your individual identity. And it wants us to really respond to the beautifully healing energies on display of Pisces, right? And spending time in the bath or swimming or oceans can be really good, and being creative can really have therapeutic and healing value right now, and service to others who share similar wounds can really help you with your healing journey as well. So in terms of the planetary energies involved, we have Chiron that represents our deepest wounds and our capacity to transform them into healing wisdom. It shows us this asteroid, right, Chiron energy, where we've been hurt and how those wounds can become our greatest gifts. And Chiron is known as the wounded healer in astrology, and it teaches us that our pain has purpose. It's meant to develop compassion and the ability to help others heal. Chiron doesn't rule any signs traditionally, but his influence is felt most powerfully in healing, teaching and mentoring relationships. Pisces energy is ruled by Neptune, co-ruled by Jupiter, and it is the sign of universal compassion, and the esoteric ruler is Pluto, and it wants us to work on spiritual transcendence, dreams and the collective unconscious. It's a mutable water energy, which means it flows, adapts, it's flexible, and it dissolves boundaries between the self and other, logic and intuition, right? And it wants us to unite things, unite our strengths and weaknesses, our shadow and light, all our different personality traits, unite our collective humanity experience, regardless of what our sexual expression, our skin colour or any other differences is. It wants us to come together in understanding and dissolve, let go of separation through love and spiritual connection. Neptune also rules illusion, escapism and the mystical realms, making Pisces both deeply healing and potentially deceptive, because remember, Pisces energy can also lead us, Neptune energy, to escape into drugs, alcohol and anything else that distracts us from our true potential. Ignore red flags, become too idealistic as well. As with any astrological energy, there's a negative and positive, right? So in terms of Chiron transit in Pisces retrograde, we get a profound, deep, next level opportunity for spiritual healing that goes beyond, transcends traditional psychological approaches, and it wants us to heal backwards, to understand our wounds through the lens of soul purpose rather than just personal trauma. Chiron is operating at, its most spiritually sophisticated level here, and this creates a unique healing environment where ancient wounds can be approached through mystical understanding, creative expression, and spiritual practices can honour both individual pain and collective healing. It's rather like having access to a cosmic healing sanctuary where time moves differently and the ordinary rules of cause and effect don't apply in the usual ways. So, ultimately, on the day-to-day, and working with this energy daily means developing natural healing abilities through intuitive practices, finding spiritual meaning in past painful experiences, and discovering your capacity to heal others and help them through your own transformed wounds by understanding yourself on the psychological, emotional and spiritual level, and accepting yourself and forgiving yourself and others, working on developing your empathy and allowing yourself to hold space for your own and others' pain without being overwhelmed by it. Negatively, the shadow side can make us avoid confronting our emotional, psychological and spiritual pain. We can use meditation and spiritual practices to avoid healing work. As I said, we can get lost in victim consciousness or have a difficulty maintaining boundaries between our own pain and others' pain. We can also become overly sensitive to collective suffering without the practical tools for protection, which can lead to emotional overwhelm and burnout, right? So we need to protect ourselves, ground ourselves and be gentle with ourselves and understand what's our pain and what's others' pain, and give ourselves the space and time to come into our own, and be gentle with ourselves. In terms of the financial meanings, it gives us increased intuitive abilities in financial decisions. It gives us a natural talent for healing-based businesses, improve financial flow through spiritual practices, and opportunities to monetize our healing gifts appropriately. And it brings financial healing through compassionate service and helps us value our healing abilities properly. Negatively, there can be a tendency to give away services without fair compensation, difficulty maintaining practical financial boundaries, potential losses can come financially, through overly trusting others, and we can sort of like, be uncomfortable because it challenges our beliefs about materialism being somehow wrong or impure, which, at the time as we walk the spiritual path, there's a lot of teachings that say that either you're not spiritual if you don't have money, or if you are spiritual you shouldn't want money. It's about finding a balance, and trying to get enough material resources to meet your needs. For some of you it'd be £10,000 a year, for others you may want to earn £30,000, others £100,000. It's about finding your level, but it's also about being open to receiving fair compensation for your gifts, knowing that you deserve to make a living, right, and to meet your needs. So if you want to charge a price that you believe is fair for your services and it meets all your bills and other needs, fine. But if you charge a price that doesn't meet these needs, then you have to question why you're charging this price, especially when others say you should charge a bit more, and that doesn't mean being excessive. So if you think your work is worth £75 an hour or dollars an hour, and others say no, you should charge $400, but you only charge £25 dollars, you have to think about a fair price to you. Politically, it can increase our compassion in political discourse, conversations, gives their natural ability to heal political divisions through understanding, and increase ability to confront collective trauma in political contexts, and it gives us improved political solutions that prioritise healing over punishments or division. But it can bring the tendency to avoid necessary political action in favour of spiritual solutions that may not confront practical needs, and it gives us a potential for political naivety due to excessive trust in others' motivations, and there can be a risk of political movements becoming unfocused due to emphasis on healing over structure and routine. So we have to find the balance between being spontaneous but having a routine, as well as getting outside of our comfort zone, and also tapping into your own instincts about others' motivations and not just believing words but making sure someone's actions backs up whatever words they say. So if someone says they're all about empathy and political leadership, but their actions show that they're not, so not only paying attention to words but action politically is important this time. On the materialistic, social, collective level, it can increase our awareness of collective trauma and healing needs, and it can improve the way we give services on a social level, focusing on healing rather than just punishment, and it can bring a natural movement towards more compassionate social structure routines that actually serve people's needs, but negatively there can be a risk of social problems, and they can be spiritualized rather than practically confronted. There can also be a potential for collective victim consciousness, and this can prevent necessary action, and there can be a tendency for social movements to lose focus through excessive emphasis on healing without practical execution. Psychologically, there can be increased emotional intelligence through spiritual understanding, natural access to healing methods that work beyond traditional therapy. It can improve our ability to process trauma through creative expression, and it can lead to a deeper understanding of psychological wounds in spiritual initiations rather than just random suffering. Negatively, there can be a tendency to spiritualize psychological problems rather than confronting them practically through appropriate professional help. There can be a potential for psychological boundaries to become too fixed, permeable, and the risk of becoming overwhelmed by others' emotional pain without proper protection. In terms of the esoteric hidden meanings, positively, it deepens our connection to spiritual healing traditions. It increases our psychic abilities and intuitive healing. It gives us access to past life healing information, and the ability to channel healing energy for others in ways that they can understand in an appropriate way and context, but negatively there can be a risk of becoming lost in spiritual fantasies rather than grounded spiritual practice. There can be a potential for spiritual delusions rather than genuine healing insights, and a tendency to avoid practical reality in favour of spiritual bypassing that doesn't change anything, so watch out for that. On the symbolic, emotional and creative level, it increases our creative expression that can heal ourselves and others, and allows us to transform pain into beauty that serves others. It improves our emotional flow through creative practices and a deeper understanding of art as a spiritual healer rather than just self-expression. Negatively, it gives us a tendency to become lost in emotional expression without practical integration, and it gives us the potential for creative work to become too focused on pain without transformation and change, and it gives us a risk of emotional overwhelming through us being creatively sensitive. So we have to make sure that we have the proper boundaries and try to stay as balanced as we can. In terms of the transits that are influencing Chiron Retrograde in Pisces 2025 to 2026, as I said earlier, these aspects will influence the whole time Chiron's retrograde in Pisces until January, right? So Venus opposed Chiron, applying increases our ability to heal relationship wounds through compassion, and helps us have a natural talent for helping others heal through love, deeper understanding of love as a spiritual medicine, and the improved capacity to attract healing relationships that support your spiritual growth. Negatively, relationship wounds can come up and resurface for healing, and this can just make you feel uncomfortable. There can also be a tendency to attract partners who mirror unhealed aspects of yourself, and this can be alarming, but try and work with it. Try and see it as something that is trying to show you what you still need to heal. There can be a risk of becoming overly focused on healing others in relationships, and there can be a difficulty maintaining healthy boundaries with wounded partners. Jupiter makes a square to Chiron, and this increases teaching abilities in healing arts, and it helps us to allow others to find meaning in our wounds, improves our ability to heal through wisdom and understanding, and it can expand opportunities for healing service that reaches wider audiences. Negatively, there can be a risk of overexpansion in healing work, leading to burnout, and there can be a tendency to promise more healing than can be delivered, and there can be potential for spiritual inflation through healing gifts, and there can be a difficulty maintaining practical boundaries in healing work. So we have to try and have boundaries when we're healing others or helping others, and respect other people's boundaries as well. Mars makes a biquintal to Chiron. This is nice, subtle energy, and it increases our ability to take action on healing insights and a natural talent for starting new healing approaches and techniques. It improves our capacity to fight for healing justice and creative approaches to transforming anger into healing power. Negatively, it can add to aggressive approaches to healing that aren't truly helpful, a tendency to fight old wounds rather than heal them. There's a risk of using healing work to avoid confronting anger appropriately, and there can be a difficulty integrating fighting energy with compassionate healing. Saturn semi-sextile to Chiron increases our ability to create long-term healing practices and have long-term sort of like vision and commit to projects long-term, yeah. And it improves our capacity to heal through discipline and structure and routine, and to use practical approaches to spiritual healing that actually work. Negatively, there can be a tendency to be overly rigid in healing approaches. There can be potential for healing work to become too routine. There can be a risk of avoiding emotional healing in favour of practical methods only. We can have a difficulty maintaining flexibility in healing practices. Chiron also makes a biquintal to the South Node, and this increases our ability to pass life healing information and as to our understanding of karmic healing patterns, and it improves our ability to heal generational dysfunction and wounds, and allows us to have a deeper understanding as healing as sole purpose rather than just personal recovery. But we can become lost in past life healing rather than confronting present issues. We can have a tendency to over-identify with past wounds. There can be a risk of healing work becoming too focused on karma rather than practical transformation, and there can be a difficulty integrating past life insights into daily life. Chiron also makes a quintal to the midheaven, and this increases our ability to build a healing career and have natural talent for public healing work, and improves our capacity to heal through professional service, and allows us to have creative approaches to healing in professional settings that serve others. Negatively, our professional healing work can become too personal, and we can have a tendency to take on clients' wounds. So we have to make sure, we maintain boundaries, and that's across the board with this energy. There can also be a risk of our healing careers becoming ungrounded, and a difficulty maintaining personal boundaries in healing work. So we just, as I said, we need to watch out for that, right? In terms of karmic meanings and lessons, it teaches us that our deepest wounds are actually sacred initiations designed to develop universal compassion and healing abilities. The retrograde motion shows that we need to heal backwards, understanding our pain through the lens of soul purpose rather than just personal trauma. This is about transforming victim consciousness into healer consciousness, which is the ultimate karmic lesson of this transit. In terms of past life memories, dreams and visions may come up involving healing roles, spiritual service or experiences where healing abilities were either developed or, suppressed, held in. Some may recall past lives as healers, mystics or spiritual teachers whose work focused on transforming collective suffering into wisdom. And ultimately, in terms of the dreams and memories that may come up for you, it depends on what is needed for your current sort of development, healing development. And in terms of this, your healing gifts will be revealed to you through dreams or memories, depending on your needs, right? Collectively, it wants us to heal through unity, as I said, rather than separation, to understand suffering as a pathway to compassion rather than just personal pain, and develop healing approaches that serve the collective good rather than just individual recovery. And it's about healing our spiritual wounds and reconnecting with ancient wisdom ultimately as a collective. Now I'm going to talk about how it influences our relationships. So in terms of family relationships, it increases our ability to heal generational trauma positively. It gives us a natural talent for bringing spiritual healing to our family dynamics and improve understanding of our family wounds and spiritual lessons, and a greater capacity to hold space for family members' pain without taking it on as our own. But we can negatively, take family members' wounds on as our own responsibility, and family healing work can become overwhelming, and we can spiritually bypass in family conflicts and have a difficulty maintaining boundaries with family members' pain. So, my advice here is to practice compassionate boundaries. You can offer healing support without taking on others' wounds as your own responsibility, which is essential for healthy family and any type of relationship, really, right? In terms of friendship, it increases our ability to offer healing support to friends and create healing friendships, improve our capacity to attract soul level friendships, and gives us a deeper understanding of friendship as spiritual medicine that serves both people. Negatively, it gives us a tendency to attract wounded friends who drain our energy, and a potential for friendships to become too focused on healing rather than joy, a risk of losing personal identity in healing friendships, and a difficulty maintaining boundaries with friends' pain. Remember that healthy friendships include joy and lightness alongside healing support, and balance is essential for sustainable relationships. In terms of co-worker relationships, it gives us the increased ability to bring healing energy to workplace vibes, and a natural talent for, mediating workplace conflicts through compassion, and improved capacity to maintain peace in professional settings, and skill in creating healing work environments. Negatively, it can add to a tendency to take on workplace emotional burdens, and professional boundaries can become too fixed, and there can be a risk of workplace relationships becoming too personal, and difficulty can come up when maintaining professional objectivity, right, and detachment, so it's important to maintain boundaries and look at things logically as well as spiritually, intuitive feeling them, but also be objective. What you may think is right may not be right for someone else, and what someone else thinks is right may not be right for you and others. So it's about finding that middle ground, right? So practice professional compassion with clear boundaries. You can be supportive without becoming everyone's workplace therapist, right? Committed couples positively increases your ability to heal relationship wounds through spiritual understanding and natural talent for creating sacred partnerships. It improves your capacity to support your partner's healing journey, and it can give you a deeper understanding of relationship as a spiritual path rather than just a romantic connection. There can be a tendency to become codependent in healing each other, and a potential for the relationship to become too focused on wounds rather than love, and there can be a risk of losing a romantic connection in favour of healing focus, and a difficulty maintaining individual healing within partnerships. So remember that healthy partnerships include celebration and joy alongside healing work. Don't let your partnerships become a, continuous therapy session. Hookup relationships, it can bring an increased ability to bring healing energy to hookups, right, and create meaningful intimate experiences, and to heal through physical connection and have a deeper understanding of sexuality and sex as spiritual medicine. Negatively, there can be a tendency to become emotionally entangled in casual connections, and sexual healing can become confusing, and there can be a risk of taking on sexual partner's wounds. So you just need to remember that it's important to practice energetic protection in intimate encounters. You can share healing energy without taking on others' wounds or compromising your own spiritual well-being, and it increases our ability to heal through solitude and self-reflection, and a natural talent for developing spiritual healing practices, improving our capacity for self-compassion, and giving us a deeper understanding of self-love as a foundation for all healing, But negatively, there can be a tendency to become isolated in the healing journey. There can be a potential for self-healing to become self-absorbed. There can be a risk of avoiding relationships in favour of healing work, and there can be a difficulty integrating healing insights into social connections, right? So it's important to balance solitary healing work with community connection healing, and remember that healing happens both in solitude and in relationship with others, In terms of our career development, it increases our opportunities in healing professions, gives us natural talent for bringing spiritual healing to any career, improves our ability to heal through professional service, and gives us a deeper understanding of work, especially seeing work as a spiritual path rather than just a income source. Negatively, we can sacrifice our practical career goals for healing ideals. Our career can become too focused on personal healing. There can be a risk of professional boundaries becoming too fixed and a difficulty maintaining career focus while processing healing. Ultimately, it's best to integrate healing gifts with practical career skills. Your healing abilities can increase any profession without becoming the sole focus, of it. So it's all about balance there. In terms of your personal development, increases access to spiritual healing practices, and we can transform our personal wounds into wisdom, improves our capacity for self-compassion and a deeper understanding of our personal growth and empathy for others as well, and seeing growth as a spiritual journey rather than just self-improvement. But we can become negatively too lost in the healing process rather than living fully, and personal development can become too focused on wounds. There can be a risk of spiritual bypassing in personal growth, and there can be difficulty integrating healing insights into daily life. So we have to remember that healing is meant to support fully living, not become a substitute for engagement with life. We have to heal, yes, but also engage with life and have healthy relationships. In terms of our spiritual development, it increases our connection to spiritual healing traditions. It gives us natural access to mystical experiences. It improves our ability to find sacred meaning in suffering and gives us a deeper understanding of spirituality as a healing path rather than an escape from reality. Negatively, we can use spirituality to avoid practical healing work, and spiritual practices can become an escape from reality, and there can be a risk of spiritual inflation, being egotistical about our healing gifts, and there can be difficulty integrating spiritual insights into the material world, and into our practical day-to-day action. So it's important to ground your spiritual healing work in practical application, and true spirituality serves life. It doesn't just escape life and responsibilities. In terms of educational development, it increases our ability to learn healing arts, gives us a natural talent for teaching healing, for example. It improves our capacity to find healing wisdom in all subjects, and it gives us a deeper understanding of education as a healing process rather than just gaining information. We should use it and make sure it improves our day-to-day life educationally, right? Negatively, there can be a tendency to be overly sensitive in educational settings, and there can be too much of a focus on being too narrowly healing focused, so just taking on classmates, educational struggles, and there can be a difficulty maintaining academic objectivity, So we can use our healing sensitivity to support your education without becoming overwhelmed by others' learning struggles, So yeah, help others but maintain your boundaries. In terms of self-partner development, it can increase your ability to heal through solitude, and it gives you an ability to develop or improve your self-healing practices. It improves your capacity for self-compassion, and it gives us a deeper understanding of self-relationship as a foundation for all healing, And negatively, it gives us a tendency to become isolated in the healing journey and self-healing. We can become too self-absorbed in that, and this can make us lose external relationships or avoid them in favour of internal healing and solitude. And also negatively, there can be a difficulty with us sharing our healing gifts with others. So it's important to balance internal healing work with external service, and remember that your healing gifts are meant to be shared with the world, So now I'm just going to finish up by talking about the best holistic activities to do and some questions to help you with your self-reflection during Chiron Retrograde in Pisces. So creative channel, paying into healing art that serves others. Develop creative healing practices that combine artistic creative expression with therapeutic value. Work with others on projects that can help heal yourself and others, and use creative expression to transform collective wounds into beauty that inspires hope. Professionals integrate healing approaches into existing professions without losing professional credibility. Develop professional healing skills that increase your current work, instead of thinking, I need to give up my current job. Some of you may need to change careers, but ultimately it's about how can you bring more healing energy, more balance, more compassion and empathy into your current work environment and workplace settings, and use your professional platform to share healing wisdom appropriately. And this can be on a spiritual level for some of you. Some of you may take a more logical approach, giving practical advice. It's up to you. Entrepreneurs develop healing based businesses that serve genuine need, create products that support healing without exploiting vulnerability, build long-term healing practices that can grow responsibly, and use business success to fund healing initiatives in your community. Alternative healers deepen spiritual healing practices through study and practice, develop psychic healing abilities with proper training and grounding, integrate traditional healing with spiritual approaches responsibly, and create healing practices that serve the collective good rather than just individual clients. Lovers create healing through intimate connection without losing romance, develop sacred sexuality practices that honor both partners, heal relationship wounds through compassion and understanding, and use love as a spiritual medicine that transforms everyone involved. For singles and self-partnered, develop healing practices that connect you to universal love, heal through creative expression that serves your community, connect with healing communities that support your journey, and use solitude as a spiritual healing opportunity rather than a form of isolation. So in terms of self-reflection questions that you can ask, in terms of your financial needs, ask how can I create sustainable income from my healing gifts without undervaluing my service, and this question confronts the common challenge of healers who struggle to charge appropriately for their work, helping you find a balance between service and sustainability. You can ask what financial wounds from my past are ready to be healed through spiritual understanding. and this can help you heal money trauma through compassionate understanding rather than just practical strategies. You can ask, how can I use my financial resources to support healing in my community? In terms of your emotional needs, you can ask, how can I maintain emotional boundaries while developing greater compassion? And this confronts the challenge of being empathetic without becoming overwhelmed by others' emotions. You can ask what emotional wounds are ready to be transformed into wisdom through spiritual understanding, and this explores how you can help yourself heal emotional trauma through spiritual beliefs, perspectives, rather than just psychological and logical processing. You can ask yourself, how can I use my emotional sensitivity as a gift for healing others? And this question helps you transform the potential burden of emotional sensitivity into a tool for service. In terms of your spiritual needs, you can ask, how can I deepen my connection to spiritual healing practices without bypassing practical healing work? And this confronts the tendency towards spiritual bypassing that can happen with Chiron transit in Pisces. What spiritual gifts am I ready to develop through understanding my wounds as sacred initiations? And this explores how Chiron in retrograde can help develop spiritual abilities through transformed suffering. You can ask, how can I serve the collective healing through my individual spiritual journey? And this question connects personal spiritual development to collective service, and it allows us to think about universal healing. In terms of psychological needs, you can ask, how can I maintain psychological clarity while developing greater intuitive abilities? This confronts the challenge of staying grounded while developing psychic and spiritual sensitivity. You can ask, what psychological patterns are ready to be healed through creative expression? And you can ask, how can I use my psychological wounds as sources of wisdom for helping others? This question helps transform personal psychological struggles into tools for service. In terms of our physical needs, we can ask, how can I create physical healing practices that honour both my mind and spirit? And this question confronts the need to integrate spiritual healing with practical physical care. We can ask, what physical symptoms are ready to be understood as messages about my deeper healing needs? And this explores how this energy can help you understand physical symptoms through a more spiritual perspective. You can ask, how can I use my physical body as a tool for healing both myself and others? And this question can help you explore how physical presence and touch can be used for healing services in an ethical way, respecting boundaries. So ultimately, when Chiron is retrograde in Pisces, it allows us to deepen our spiritual understanding and universal compassion, and teaches us that our pain has purpose. And this is not to invalidate your experiences, but to help you make a better life for yourself. It can help you develop your capacity to heal yourself and others and serve the collective good rather than just personal recovery. And the retrograde motion shows we need to approach healing backwards, understand our wounds through the lens, the mindset, the viewpoint of soul purpose rather than just personal trauma. And we just have to watch out for the tendency to spiritual bypass, the risks of becoming overwhelmed by collective and individual suffering, and finding it hard to maintain practical boundaries while developing greater compassion for ourselves and others. So ultimately, it gives us the genuine transformative opportunity to increase our intuitive healing abilities and have access to spiritual practices that create real change, and gives us the capacity to transform personal wounds into universal wisdom that serves others. Remember that Chiron retrograde in Pisces isn't about becoming a continuous wounded healer. It's about becoming a transformed healer who serves from wisdom rather than wounds. Use Chiron transit in Pisces to develop your healing gifts, deepen your spiritual understanding, and prepare to serve the world through your transformed pain rather than your ongoing suffering. So yeah, that's the end of my very in-depth special on Chiron Retrograde in Pisces 2025 to 2026. Take care and see you next time.